So good evening to the Raytown Quality School District parent and community members. Thank you for joining us this evening as we begin to embark upon a new study for the 2025 school year and moving forward regarding the enrollment in Raytown Quality Schools. For those of you whom I've not had the fortunate opportunity to meet, my name is Dr. Penelope Martin Knox, and I'm the superintendent of Raytown Quality Schools. And I would like to first begin by introducing those who have joined us this evening, who are classified as our executive leaders. We have joining us this evening Ms. Marissa Cleaver-Womble, Mr. Matt Verlinden, Ms. Jackie Vernon, Dr. Carl Calcara, Dr. Chris Greiner, and Mr. Josh Husted, who are executive leaders here in Raytown. Together, we form a team that continues to examine the ways in which we could better utilize our space to meet the academic and the physical needs of our students. So when we talk about enrollment planning, some of you may ask, what does that mean? What that means is that we have examined the enrollment of our students in our school district and forecasting what our district will look like in the years to come. Always focused on the academic needs of our students, the physical safety of our students, maximizing the use of our facilities, while also keeping in mind the fiscal implications for our operations. We will always come together to make sure we are doing what's best and what's right for our students and for our community. And tonight is just the first of many of series that we will bring to your attention. So let me preface by saying thank you for logging in and joining us this evening. Tonight, we also have Mr. Matthew Cropper and Mr. James Cooper, who represent Cropper GIS, who's actually the organization or the company, if you will, that has led the work for us to examine our enrollment. During this evening's meeting, you will have an opportunity to pose questions in our chat. And if time permits, we will answer those questions. But if not, every question will get answered because we will create an FAQ that will be disseminated amongst our community. This allows you to have a voice in this process and to ensure we are engaging our community that includes our students, our staff, and our parents and our business partners. So again, I thank you for being a part of this engaging conversation. And if you have any questions, please feel free to enter those questions into our chat. Again, if time permits, we will answer those questions live this evening, and or we will make sure they are responded to in an FAQ that we will provide access to our communities. So once again, thank you for joining us. And at this time, I'm going to introduce Mr. Matthew Cropper, the president of Cropper GIS. Mr. Cropper.
Thank you, Dr. Martin Knox. And thank you, everybody, for the opportunity to be here and present to everybody for this important effort. I am Matthew Cropper with Cropper GIS Consulting, and we are K-12 planners who do this kind of work all across the United States. Our specialty is doing this type of work: enrollment planning, evaluating utilization of schools. We do a long-range forecasting, enrollment forecasting work, which we have done for the district already. And we also do other types of analysis of pupil yields and housing analysis. So we bring to the table a lot of expertise and experience. I am Matthew Cropper, president of the company. I have over 30 years of experience in doing this and serving districts across the United States. And we work with districts everywhere from 2,000 to 200,000 students. And so we bring a lot of experience in how other communities have addressed challenges that districts are facing similar to yours. And in addition to working with public schools, I also do work with the U.S. Department of Justice, the Office of Civil Rights, where I provided consultation to the Educational Opportunities section for about 20 years. And so not here to focus on any of that, but really more of a focus on specific efforts made by the district that's driving this project. So tonight's presentation is to give you an overview on our process and for you to learn about how the process is going and how you can follow and how you can participate in this process. There are not any particular maps or options or any draft changes that are being shared at the webinar tonight, and that's forthcoming, and we will be sharing some things with you in September. The purpose of tonight is to give you an overview on the overall process, how you can follow the process, and where you can participate and start to provide input and see what's going on. So the objectives of this project and why are we here? And that is because the district is looking at enrollment and facilities and want to make sure that they're leveraging all the space that they have available to maximize the use of their facilities. We are looking to the overall objectives are to expand academic programming to improve student achievement and college and career readiness, while doing that, also reducing capital expenditures. To look at aligning utilization of facilities with current and forecasted enrollment. So we have current enrollment data that we're planning with, and then we also have a long-term forecast, a 10-year forecast that we'll be leveraging as well, so that we can understand what's happening, what's to come in the next 10 years, so we can be as proactive as possible. We want to maximize the utilization of school facilities, and then to identify solutions that provide students with opportunities to learn in engaging and supportive environments. Currently, there are spaces that the district is in that they're renting that aren't owned by the district. And part of this is just looking at how can the district leverage the space that they own and work within all of the space that they can control without having to rent space. And that in turn saves money on bricks and mortar and focuses on efforts on educational delivery. So we were hired by the district to help develop materials to help facilitate this process and give the public a window to look in, and also a method for giving us input and providing useful information and feedback as the process matures. To leverage our expertise in doing this kind of work with districts on a daily basis across the United States, and ultimately to recommend any changes that we may identify as optimal and adhering to our objectives, recommending those changes to the school board for their consideration and approval. As we go through and evaluate any changes that may be made to boundaries or facilities, or any way students are assigned to schools, we always like to focus on a set of criteria. And these are the criteria, the rules to follow as we evaluate the practicability of making a change. What this does is this helps us and everybody who's involved focus on making data-driven decisions and not allowing the emotional side of change to start to influence the process. So these criteria are all considered pretty much equal weight, although balancing school facility utilization is an objective and a criteria. So I would say that one sometimes typically takes precedent over others. But these criteria include to balance that school utilization, to make sure there's an equitable amount of space in every school so that students can have the similar amount of available space, but also be mindful of growth potential so that if an area is growing or potentially declining, we may be able to fill one school a little bit more or less to accommodate what we're anticipating in the future. As we're looking at making potential changes, we want to be mindful of the economic, cultural, and ethnic diversity of schools, making sure that we maintain the demographics that exist in your schools, and try not to create any other imbalances, if at all possible, as it relates to demographic characteristics of schools. Trying to assign students as close to their school as possible, as close to their home as possible. If at all possible, we want to make sure that a child can attend school as close to their home. That goes in line with transportation efficiency and busing efficiencies. If the students are assigned as close to their home as possible, that's fewer miles and gas spent on buses and things like that. Try to establish contiguous zones if we make a change. So what we don't want to do is we don't want to go in the heart or the middle of an attendance area and draw a circle around a neighborhood or an apartment complex and reassign it to a school that's further away. So that's one zone per school is the most ideal scenario and aligns with best practices in this industry. We want to be mindful of future growth potential, like I mentioned. We will be studying feeder patterns. So basically means how much of an elementary school feeds to the same middle school, and how much of a middle school feeds to the same high school. In a perfect world, you would have all your elementary schools, all the kids progressing to the same middle school, and all the same middle school progressing to the same high school. But there's many cases where we cannot achieve a 100% feeder pattern. And in those cases, if you have to split a school, it's most ideal to split that school more 50-50 than to have what you want to avoid is say 95% of an elementary school goes to one middle school and only 5% the rest of the elementary goes to a different one. Thinking of students as they're making friends and building these social bonds and dynamics through their tenure of their schooling. Then they go to the next level, they have some familiar faces and people that they recognize and friends that they can reconnect with and bond with through that scary transition. We want to draw any lines down major roads. And we also are being mindful if we do make a change, we will be drawing the lines along property lines. So so it's very definitive and there's no question of the line draws to the halfway through the back of someone's property, making sure that we use major roads and natural geographic features and man-made. That also helps enable safety, maximum safety for students, minimize the number of times students have to cross over major roads and those types of things. And in any kind of scenario, as we look in potentially making changes, we want to minimize the impact. So we will be calculating how many students could be potentially impacted in any particular scenario that we're looking at. And in the perfect world, the best scenario will be one that will have also a minimal impact on students. Although that's the case, it's important to know that the best plan will be one that adheres to these criteria as a whole as best as possible. So where there could potentially be the recommendation that adheres to the criteria as a whole really well, but impacts more students than another scenario. So we will be looking at all these factors and being mindful of them. And the final factor that is very common is what we call legacy enrollment. And so this is if we're planning to make a change or recommending a change for any particular school, we want to ensure that any student who's at their final year of schooling at that particular level can stay at that building if at all possible. And that helps further reduce the impact on students, and it allows that student to finish out their final year. But one thing to consider with that is if a parent or a guardian does participate in that provision, that siblings are typically not eligible to also follow along with them. And then also that student must have their own transportation provided, and the school district will not transport a student who may have been impacted but is able to stay that final year. Those legacy enrollment provisions will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis. Once this is all said and done and recommended, the district will evaluate anybody who's requesting to remain, and for special permissions or any type of condition, they will evaluate those on a case-by-case basis. So let's talk about who the stakeholders, and this is everybody from the consultant, myself, and Cropper GIS staff, all the way to the Board of Education. As I said, we are facilitating this process. We're here to give thoughts from a third party, completely objective point of view with no bias and no influence. But we are letting the process take its course and making sure that things are focused with the objectives and criteria in mind. As Dr. Martin Knox said, we are working with the district administrators, and they are what we call the internal planning team. It's central office and senior leadership, department staff, personnel, and planning. And this internal planning team is the group that's working on evaluating options and looking to see what options we want to share with the public in September. Up to this point, this group has been working with us to put things together and get things prepared for tonight's webinar. And from this point on, our focus is going to be on developing options and getting prepared to share some maps with you in any particular statistics and options in September. And I'll share you some dates with that here in a minute. The general public is a critical part of this process in that you will be informed through a website. We have developed a web page specific for this effort. There's already a general feedback form on there where you can provide input to us or any thoughts before any maps are even shared of options and things like that. And then when we get into the public information session, the next public information session, we share maps. There's going to be a survey and more directed input where we're looking for feedback as it relates to the criteria that we'll reach out to you for. But we really encourage the public to follow and track this process. We value the public's input, and we value an open and transparent process. The Board of Education sort of takes more of a step back on this and lets the work of the other stakeholders do their work. Although they are being observing the process and being mindful, they are being briefed from time to time on the progress of the work, so that when it comes time for us to prepare a recommendation for the board, they're somewhat informed on what's potentially coming, and so that they're not just broadsided by any recommendation, but they are allowing the district in the IPT to do their work. The board typically handles sort of the high level policy related decisions and other considerations that need to be considered that require some input and guidance from the board. So looking at our timeline, we've been working on this process since July, and maybe a little bit before that, and collecting data and information. We put information together and converted it all into our mapping and in other formats for you guys to have and see. And then we started working on some baseline options internally. Our staff, my staff, have been working to prepare for the next couple of weeks and working with the internal planning team to start evaluating options and looking at how many scenarios we want to take to the public. Those public information sessions you can see are in green. We're here at the first public information session, which is a webinar, but on September 18th, we will be in person in Raytown to share some maps with you and to have some conversations with you sort of in a gallery walk format and get more input from you. And there's also going to be a webinar the week after the 18th where we will share the same things for anybody who prefers to have to consume this information in sort of a Zoom type format like we're doing now. The internal planning team is continuing their work all the way through the course of the study, and we are looking at presenting or any recommendations to the Board of Education on October 13th of this year. So just a quick overview on our approach and our process. Like I said, we collect data, we've collected information from a variety of sources, and then we put the data together, we convert it into our mapping system, which is GIS, stands for Geographic Information Systems. Then we also put together some reports and other handouts and materials for you to consume and to get more familiar with the data that we are evaluating. And then the third phase is developing those materials even further and putting things out and developing web pages and feedback forms and all that kind of information. And then ultimately creating some options as we prepare for the fourth phase, which is engaging with the public and meeting with the district administrators and evaluating options. And so we are underway, already in sort of phase 4 of this process, and excited to be working with you and sharing some things with you here soon. Looking a little bit further in data collection, we get information from the school district. We collect student data so that we can count students on any particular street and understand how many students would be impacted. With our mapping system, we have really accurate data so that we can make really accurate estimates and provide information as we work through this. The city and county have been very helpful in providing data about addresses and streets and property lines and all of that information that we leverage for our mapping and also to help make accurate maps and things like that. I always say that data collection is never something that ends. As the public continues to look at this, and also the internal planning team, you may say something or provide some sort of feedback that says and gives us an aha moment, like, okay, we haven't studied that piece of data yet. it's possible that we'll reach out and try to collect some additional information based on feedback that's provided from any of the stakeholders. So data collection is kind of something that remains open through the course and never closes. And we're always open to hear and listen to any input that's being provided. As we collect data, we've converted a lot of information into our maps and GIS format. One of the things that you'll see in a lot of data that we're going to be sharing with you and talking about are what we call planning blocks. So if you see the map that's on the screen, that map, the tan area is an elementary school attendance area. We take every attendance area and we break it down into smaller pieces. Think of these as building blocks or kind of pieces of the puzzle that we look at evaluating the feasibility of moving it one way or the other if necessary to accomplish our objectives. The entire district has gone through this process where we break it down into smaller building blocks with the focus on trying not to split up neighborhoods, trying not to split communities. You'll see when you look at these planning blocks, each planning block has an ID number. So it's possible that many members of the public will sometimes tell us, I'm in planning block 136, and these are my thoughts. You can also tell us what subdivision you're in, kind of give us a cue on where you're coming from. That helps us understand what your comments are and give it sort of a focus on where your thoughts are focused on. But within each planning block, we give a planning block ID number. And then below that, it gives a number of students that live within each planning block. This kind of helps you guys understand how many kids live in each area. And as we start to develop options, you can maybe see, okay, this one is moving 35 students from here to here. Why did they move this one and this one? Well, okay, this planning block may only have 5 kids, but this one has 40. So that makes sense. And so the planning blocks are things that are still open. If, for instance, if members of the public, if you identify a planning block that, say, for example, cuts off the end of your house at the end of a street on accident, you can tell us that input, and we'll go in and make a change to the planning block map to make sure that we leverage your input and fully adhere to our criteria. We've also done a lot of other maps and put things together, and I'll share some of these other resources for you here in a little bit. We do have developed maps for all of the attendance areas within the district. And so this is a map showing all of the district. Sometimes in our projects, we'll only work with a small subset of the district. But in this case, we are working with the entire district and looking at the entire district. Like I said, we're going to try to minimize the impact on students in any particular scenario. But I think it's safe to say, or at this point, I think it's safe to say that any student in the district could be impacted by any particular change that we're considering, although we're going to try to minimize and move as few students as possible. We are looking at elementary, middle, and high school as we go through this, and so at any particular level could also be affected, although we will be looking at providing any recommendations while moving as few students as possible. We have an interactive map that you can see the URL below. It's croppermap.com/Raytown_MO. We also have this embedded in our project webpage, which I will share with you in a little bit. But the interactive map is a really good way for you to really see more details about the district. As you zoom in, you start to see more information. And then when we start to get to options, we'll start posting options on here. This is kind of a screenshot that shows you the interactive map, but I was going to just share with you just do a little demonstration and show you how the interactive map works. Okay, so this is your online interactive map. You'll see sometimes if you're looking at this on a phone or a tablet, it may look like this. There is a little arrow on the left side that opens up a sort of a list of layers that you can interact with. So here you see elementary, middle, and high school boundaries. You can click on any particular layer to see the different levels, elementary, middle, or high school. As you zoom in on the map, more information starts to pop up. So you start to see more road details. You start to get in closer. You start to see property lines. A lot of other information starts to show. And this helps us kind of understand how the property lines are oriented. And then when we start getting into the details, making sure that we don't cut the line through a residential area or any particular parcel. You also be able to turn the little plus sign lets you see the planning blocks. You could turn on the planning blocks, and this shows you what I was talking about. So this is planning block 68. There are 22 K through fifth graders living in this planning block in the black and white dashed outline. You can look at, say, K through 6 if you want to see if there's K through 6, what the difference is for K through 5, K through 6. You could also look at middle school, so 6th through 8th grade, 7th through 8th grade, different grade configurations that, and then 9 through 12 are high schoolers. So this kind of gives you an idea of how many kids live in any particular area within each particular planning block. And this helps just further give you information on what's really on the ground and what are we looking at as well. Go back to the PowerPoint presentation here. We've also developed a background report for you guys to look at, also as well as the internal planning team and for all stakeholders. Really, this is a reference guide for this process. It helps the public kind of go to see and answer any questions about data that they may not know. And this helps avoid any speculation. So if you're talking to your neighbors and you're working through it and you say, okay, what's the capacity of this school? I don't know. I think it's about 800, or how many students are enrolled at this school? I think it's that. You can go to the background report and it gives you a lot of key data and information so that there's no need to speculate, and you can see just the information that we are looking at as we work through this. The background report has information on the objectives, those criteria I talked about, our process and timeline. We've already got some maps that kind of show some dynamics of the student enrollment at each particular school, and then some enrollment and utilization tables in this background report. I should also note that this presentation is being live streamed, and when we're complete with this, when we're done with this presentation within the next couple of days, I will also put a link of the recording of this presentation online, so anybody can go back and watch who may not have been able to participate tonight. So that's also going to be available. So the fourth phase is the baseline options development. Like I said, we will be starting typically with a couple of options that we develop to help hit the ground running to kind of see what it could look like. But the internal planning team has the ability to make changes to these maps, potentially create a new one, or take one off the table. Basically, the focus is to start with some options, but then work to prepare maps to be shared with the public at that public information session in September. And then the internal planning team and public, as a critical part of this process, we've already been meeting with the internal planning team, kicking off the process with the public here tonight, this evening. But there will be some public information sessions in September for you guys to participate in. We're really looking forward to you attending those to give us insight on maps that are being considered, and then ultimately recommending a plan to the board in October 2025. We do have a webpage called raytownenrollmentplanning.com. And this webpage has all the information that I've shared with you. We have a link to the online interactive map. We also have a copy of the background report on here. We have the demographic study that we've developed recently on here. All the resources that we've developed and started to prepare are available on raytownenrollmentplanning.com. And as we continue to the process matures, more material will start to show up here. Like this presentation and a recording will be on here, and a lot of other resources will be available on this site. I'll show you just a little bit quick preview of the site. So this is raytownenrollmentplanning.com. There is an English to Spanish translation if you're interested in having it in a different language. You can convert it to a different language. But in here, this is kind of the one-stop shop for all the information related to this project. The timeline, and as you go down, you'll see more information, project maps, the online map. We'll have another section for the public webinar tonight. We have the general feedback form here, where you can give us input at any particular time. If this is live now, so even before any maps are being shared, there is a vehicle for you to be able to start giving us input and just tell us anything you think about the process or anything related to this study. So we encourage you to stay informed and provide input. We really want to have input from you. I would say the best way to provide input at this point is to fill out that feedback form at any time. You can go back and fill it out multiple times if you want. If you forgot to say something, feel free to do that. And then attend those public information sessions on the 18th and the 24th of September. On the 18th, that public information session is going to be at 6 p.m. at Raytown South High School in the Performance Arts Center. And the address is here on Sterling Avenue at Raytown, Missouri. At that meeting, we will be sharing draft maps. It's going to be kind of a gallery walk format. We'll open it up with a presentation, and then we'll have maps and statistics on the easels. And then the internal planning team and consultants will be standing around having conversations with the public around the maps, talk through any of the thoughts you have and help you make sure you're familiar with everything. And then ultimately there will be a survey that accompanies those public information sessions to get more input from you. You're also welcome to attend the Board of Education work session on October 13th or at any particular time before that, where you can provide input to the board at their public comment process. Next steps for us are to continue to work with the internal planning team, looking and developing options in preparation for September 18th and 24th. That's the key thing we're preparing for right now. And then once those public information sessions are completed, we'll then be working towards materializing and studying your input, and then bringing a recommendation to the board on October 13th of this year. So as I said, anybody is welcome to provide any questions in the chat. You'll see there's a chat window on your Zoom on the Zoom toolbox there. If you want to, you're welcome to type in any questions in there, which we as members of the panel can answer at this time. Let's see. So do we have any questions that need to be answered?
So, Mr. Cropper, I have two, and I'm not sure if our participants can see them. And the two that I have that have been shared are pretty much on the same line. And so I just need to reiterate to our community that we are engaging you to hear your voice. We're engaging our staff, our leaders, our board, just to make sure your voice is a part of this process. So the request now is to tell our community what buildings are being closed. And I will just say to you that we have not had a discussion about school closures. We are looking at ways in which we can maximize the use of our facilities that we have. This is where your voice is important. The information is available to you. Mr. Cropper has given you a couple of links. And Mr. Cropper, I'm going to ask that you go back to the one link where you share where the maps are in terms of croppermat.com at Raytown, Missouri. If you can go to that one for me. So that information is available to you for you to use at any time you'd like to study this information. But as Mr. Cropper stated, there will be a portal that's put out there, a survey that's put out there so that you can have your voice heard. The other thing I'm going to ask Mr. Cropper is if you can go to the Raytown website or the page where, again, the information that we're communicating in terms of the logistical pieces, that you are able to see that information. You are going to be a part of this process from the very beginning, which is tonight. And so if you go to https raytownenrollmentplanning.com, all of the documentations, all the documents that we've used, I apologize, all the information that's been communicated will be located there. This webinar has also been recorded, so you can continue to go back, because tonight you may not have any other questions, but if you go back and listen to it and replay it or visit the website, you may form other questions that you could have posed this evening, and we are open to hear that information and input. And so when we talk about the work that we're engaging in, We will take a final decision in October to our board for a vote. But up and until that point, we will engage you as the community. We will evaluate ideas that are brought forward. We will use all of the criteria that Mr. Cropper has discussed to make sure you're a part of the conversation. And so we wanted to give you the information upfront to talk you through this process of enrollment planning. Remember, throughout the years moving forward, our enrollment is declining. It's declined over the past 10 years as well. And so we have to keep that in mind in terms of making sure we are keeping in the forefront the academic outcomes for our children, our staffing, the utilization of our facilities, transportation, and all of those factors have an impact on our district financially. And so to give you an answer that some have asked for, just tell us what buildings are closing, there is no answer for that question in terms of buildings closing because there's not been a conversation about building closures. And so we're going to continue to be open. We're going to engage you in this conversation. We've had a conversation already thus far with our Board of Education, with our school-based leaders as executive leadership, and now with you as our community. And so I just want to make sure that you understand that we will look at our student enrollment from pre-K through 12, not just for this year, but for the years to come. When we come to a decision, it is going to be in effect for the 26-27 school year. And I think it's important for us to continue to understand we continue to drive this work. So our plan is for 26-27, but if we don't have a viable option, it could be pushed even further. We are not going to make a hasty decision about what is needed and what we see at this particular point in time. But I assure you that with your voice, you coming to the table with rationalization for any kind of decision that may be made, we are open to engage you in this conversation in the forefront. Our next meeting that will be held will be face-to-face, where, as Mr. Cropper stated, there will be documents for you to examine, for us to engage in a gallery walk. But I encourage you to visit the website, look at the link, look at the information, and then even go back and listen to the webinar. We have our executive staff who are available for questions even beyond this evening's webinar because there will be a survey that will be provided. We will also have a page where you can post additional questions again beyond this evening. So again, we are going to keep in the forefront of these conversations academic outcomes for our children that are positive, facility utilization, student enrollment, transportation, the growth and decline within Raytown, and all of those factors, again, will help us decide which is the best direction for Raytown. And again, it begins today with the conversation we're engaging in. And so, Mr. Cropper, those are the two that have been presented. Some of them have said that this is good information, but they want us to get to the bottom line. And there is no bottom line to get to because we've not made that decision. Again, we will engage you and keep you in the forefront of the dialogue as we continue to move forward and plan. And so as we bring this to a close, I want to say thank you. Again, I preface with thank you when we opened, just to make sure that you understand we appreciate your voice. It is important. You're partners in this work with us. We can't do it alone. There's historical context that you can bring to the table. There's some other factors that Mr. Cropper talked about with having an outlier, a home or an address or development that may lie within a certain boundary. All those factors will be taken into consideration. But most importantly, your voice needs to be heard. It needs to be at the table. And that's why we're having these meetings. So I, again, thank you for your time. Mr. Cropper, I don't know if you wanted to add anything else before we close.
No, I would just say that there have been a few other questions that have come through in the Q&A since we opened the floor for it. One question was, are pre-K numbers being looked at? And that is something that we will add pre-K counts to the web map just for the public's benefit and for everybody, just in case that's something that gets evaluated. We will include that. So I appreciate you asking that question. But again, really appreciate your time and your participation. I would encourage you to fill out the general feedback form. And I think the big thing that I always tell districts when we do this is that we're looking to provide any kind of recommendations, with a mind of what's best for all children in this district and not just one school community, one neighborhood, or one student. We will look at making any recommendations that focus on what's best for all children, but we will be compassionate to your concerns and do our best to leverage your input as much as we can. And thank you, Dr. Martin Knox and staff, for giving us this opportunity, and members of the public, to present this to you this evening.
And Mr. Cropper, may I add one thing to this as well? While it didn't get asked overtly, usually when there's closures of buildings, there's also a loss of staff. And so within this conversation, so staff knows that we are invested in human capital. We are looking at making sure we have the appropriate staff to meet the needs of our children. And again, excluding staff, if you will, while we're in the process of planning, there is no plan to terminate staff or to cut staffing at this point in time. Again, I will make sure that we continue to stay informed and we inform our community and we encourage your voice to be a part of this process. So with that being said, again, continue to look at the links that have been provided, the https raytownenrollmentplanning.com. This webinar will also be posted in case you miss it, but we will also have, Mrs. Cleaver-Womble, we'll also have this information posted on our website, right?
Yes, we will post it on our website, and we will also send it out via our social media so people can watch the link and get this information as well.
And so even to those who are on this call, if there's another form that we can utilize to communicate this information, just let us know, and we'll add that to the components that we have already scheduled to communicate with our families and with our community. So again, I thank you for your time. I thank you for your participation. I thank you for your future engagement, and I look forward to us partnering to do what's best for Raytown Quality Schools. Thank you also very much, and this will bring a close to our enrollment study webinar. Have a great evening.